Okay, let's do it.
Hello, everyone. This is Hollywood, and I am coming to you live with Mupo and Friends with our host, Michelle Mupo, and my co-host, Heather Hernandez, and our tech, Mehdi Barrett. And we have a very special guest in-house today for you, and her name is Carolyn Flower. She is the CEO, owner of Oxygen Publishing, coming to you live from Montreal, Canada. So we've got New Jersey in the house, LA in the house, Montreal, Canada in the house, and Wisconsin is in the house. So welcome, and welcome, Carolyn. Thank you for being here today. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. This is so much fun. I love you guys. I love what you're doing. I love everything that you're growing this amazing company. So thanks for having me with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to have you on.
It's a lot of fun. We have lots of fun stuff to talk about.
Yes, we do. And first off, for people that, a lot of people have heard of Carolyn because Carolyn is everywhere these days. And she pretty much, anyone that's writing a book or has an idea, they're on with Carolyn. And Carolyn, rightfully so, Carolyn puts out a lot of great authors. She has a saying that first she teaches you how to be an author. Then she guides you to writing your book.
You bet.
Your story, your extraordinary story.
Yep.
So Carolyn, tell us please how you came to be an author. What first of all, what's your background and what inspired you to write? Because I know a little bit about you, and I know this inspiration came quite a while in your childhood.
Yes, it came from a really, really young age, and like as far back as I can remember, one of those expressions. Yeah, so writing was it was the way I solved things. It was how I managed to take things. I used to think it was magic that I could think things and then write down my thoughts and then read my thoughts and solve a problem. And my challenges as a kid was living in a house where one parent wasn't very healthy mentally, and the other parent spent most of their time looking after the other parent. So I don't have siblings, so a lot of the time I was kind of left to figure things out at a pretty young age, and I didn't understand what was always going on around me. So I used to write, and what I learned only later in life is that I was actually writing gratitude, because the best-selling book I wrote 5 years ago was about gratitude. And when I was a kid, I used to do that. I used to, I guess, focus on exactly what I loved about my life versus what I didn't. And so I would write, I love my bike, I love my room, I love my friends, I love my park. And you can imagine I was pretty young. And then so that ended up kind of being the way I started writing gratitude. And then I went into theater here in Montreal. I've been part of the musical theater community since I was about 12. And that was my family. That's really how I grew up. Now, I'd had a mom and dad. I had a great mom and dad, but my mom and dad kind of were busy figuring their things out. And young Carolyn had to figure out, well, the arts and creativity was really where I'm an artist. I draw the literary word. And so I ran the school newspaper. I went into theater. So that really became my way of expressing myself. So I was always writing. And as I wrote and started kind of expressing myself through newspaper columns, I developed a communication company in 1992. So we're like 28 years and counting. And that was really all about helping other people. I've always really been about helping other people tell their story, whether I was doing it through a newspaper column, whether I was doing it through PR and promotion, whether I was doing it through a piece of theater. We were always helping other people kind of tell their story. So it kind of made sense that I would, become an author. And that's a really interesting story about where I discovered the belief of the fact that I was actually an author, and it happened also at a really young age. So that's kind of it's been throughout my life. Right?
And I wanted to say, wait, hold on. I wanted to say happy anniversary. So everyone say happy anniversary.
Yes. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary to Oxygen Publishing, 1 year.
Yep.
And standing strong, really growing. Your company is incredible. You've added so many dynamics and new departments and programs, and it's incredible. I want you definitely to share more about that. But I wanted to ask you, because I attended something that you did, and it was a mastermind for for writers, and your approach was very interesting. It was an approach to writing through gratitude. We used the book that you did, and explain to the audience why the gratitude and how that has played a role in influencing what you write and the authors that you choose to work with.
Well, gratitude is really all about the vibrational energy that you live your life in. You know, we want to learn how to live from the inside out. I mean, the name of my book is Gravitate to Gratitude. Journal your journey, begin within. And begin within was like a double entendre, right? Like, go open that book and begin within and learn about gratitude, why it's so powerful as a wellness strategy, because that's really what it is for me. It's the foundation of all. Because if we live life in the law of rhythm, universal law tells us that we're going to move in and out of good feeling days, not so good feeling days. You get to really decide how long you want to stay in the not so good feeling days. But the thing is, you can change it at any time just by tapping into that energy and that feel-good feeling of gratitude. And that's what really opens up your channels of creativity. So if you can imagine, somebody decides they want to write a book, and then they've got, they're focused on all the things that are unwanted in their world. They're focused on all the things they feel like complaining about, and all these things that are going on in their outer world. You're not going to be able to really tap into your imagination too well. But if you're in this attitude of gratitude, you can't have a positive and negative emotion at the same time. So when I teach authors how to become an author, before we really get into getting that pen out or that manuscript started, becoming that author is really learning how to think, how to manage your thoughts, how to get your emotions based on how you think, and then getting yourself into this really creative vibration. And that vibration you can tap into. The fastest way I know how is through that wellness strategy of gratitude. So that's how it kind of one weaves into the other. And for what I've discovered over all these years is that, people say you write a book and then you become an author. And like you said, I flip it around. It's really, you need to become the author first. You need to understand, who is it you want to become? Who do you emulate? Who do you admire? What is it that you want to bring to the world? Who do you want to step up into becoming? Because don't forget, once you make a decision to become an author, you're an authority, you're a leader. So what does that leader in you look like? And what does it feel like now that you've achieved it in the present tense? So all of that is the becoming the author part. And if you can master that and really learn how to become that next best version of yourself, the writing isn't the challenge. When people talk about writer's blocks, it's just an expression people use, but they get resistance because they don't believe their story matters. They don't believe they have anything worthwhile to tell people. And what I teach them is the absolute truth, that everything you believe that you aren't is holding you back. So let's move through that. Let's understand how much your story matters. And once you actually tap into that and understand that belief, you'll be able to write your book. There's no such thing as writer's block once you understand.
Is that where Extraordinary Stories came from, the title?
Yeah, because life writes extraordinary stories. People are so accustomed to living in their story. They don't, we don't spend time asking everyone what their story is, but every story matters. And think about all the times that you've read books or you've watched a piece of theater and you were so impacted by the story, and it's based on someone's story and it's written from somebody's imagination, and you're left with that feeling of, oh my gosh, I've learned something, or I feel so much better now that I've had the opportunity to engage with this piece of art. And that's how I look at the whole process. So it's really important that you understand the power of your story. And that's why I really believe everyone has an extraordinary story. When I was a kid, when I was in grade 4, and I would come to school, I had a teacher who took a shine to me. And she knew that there was all sorts of stuff at home that I would come to school and write through, because that was just my strategy, right? Other people have other strategies. That one was mine. And I would write. And she used to say, why don't you bring me, I was writing a lot of poetry. So she would say, why don't you bring me your work? And at the end of the class, we'll spend some time and I'll go over it. And she was an English teacher, but I was like 9. I was 9 years old. And her name was Mrs. Gold. And I talk about her often because I want her to be, to be well loved and thought of. I want to give that gratitude back to her all the time. And so what she would ask me to do is write my poems on bristle boards. Now, for people that are in viewership that are really, really young, don't know what that was, but we didn't have iPads or phones and all that kind of thing. She asked me to write it out on like a cardboard, and I would, and then she'd put them all over the classroom, in front of my little classmates, and she'd put these poems up on the wall, and I thought I was a published author. I thought I was an author. And so that's the gift she gave me, this belief.
She empowered you.
Yeah. And there was no time after that I did not believe that I was an author.
Now
We have a question from a viewer, if I may.
Sure.
They want to know, have you ever gotten writer's block?
I don't call it, it's, sometimes we have to pay attention to the language that we think to ourselves and the language that we use, because if you believe that you have a block, you will have a block. So I don't tend to use that kind of language. I expect that when I have like an inner wealth practice every morning, and I believe that getting ready for my day is my job inside, right? Because the inner world reflects the outer world. So before I turn on any phones or any kind of anything, I've done the work, I've done gratitude, I've done journaling. So I kind of prepare my mind for the day. So I'm not often faced with a block because I kind of open up those channels of creativity. But what I encourage anyone to do, first of all, is to alter the language. So instead of saying, I have writer's block, say, I can't wait to go and write today. Like, I can't wait, I get to go and write today, as if it's something that you're really, really expecting results from. And then when things come to you, instead of thinking about, I've got to go and write at 5 p.m. this afternoon within that hour of time and put that kind of pressure on yourself, just look for inspiration that's going to come to you all day. Because once you make a decision to write a book, you gotta be ready for the downloads that are going to come. You got to be in the energy of receiving those downloads. So get a notepad, use your phone, track the thoughts. You're going to find that once you stop telling yourself you have any kind of a block and say, I can't wait to receive that information and what kind of inspiration am I going to get today, it's going to start coming. And then you're going to have to start learning how to write really fast or dictating it to yourself. So sometimes it is just in the way we think about things that sets us up to expect that thing. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And that's applicable to many, many areas of our lives.
Of course. Yeah.
Now, do you think someone could be a writer if they don't feel any emotions? Because I know me, it's hard to get my writing out right now. I have issues from my past that I'm bringing out in writing. Like, if I have no emotion and I try to block something, tell everyone how you're getting it out. Because we're doing these sessions and you're bringing it out. And I know there's people out there that feel that they can, they just can't do it. How could you get them in that positive mind state? And how could you get them to overcome their fear of the blockage and the writing and get them on that positive state? Because I know you've been trained by probably one of the best guys.
Yeah, Bob Proctor. I owe a lot of most of the mindset. I mean, we all have mentors, and I encourage everyone to find a mentor that really resonates with you. But I've studied under Bob Proctor for many years. So that's where, I've learned a lot of these principles, personal growth, personal and professional growth principles. But I tend to think of, and I guess that maybe is what makes what I do a little bit different, is I think of writing a book as a transformational process for the author first, before the reader. So it stands to reason, if you're writing a book, your reader eventually is going to read the book. I've got a ton of my books from my authors back there. You're going to pick up one of those books and you will be transformed as a reader. But guess what? The author has to go through that process first. And I think I try to explain that to everybody when they start. The reason why people don't write books isn't because they can't write a book. It's because, first of all, there's resistance and there's emotion. And so when you start telling your story back to yourself and you start writing about a certain period of your life maybe, and you want that included in your book, and your personal story should be in your book, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're going to feel something. And it's going to likely be uncomfortable because growth is uncomfortable. So if you think of the process as, I've been called to write a book because there's something about my life that's asking me to move myself forward. And some people get called to move forward through tragedy, through adversity, through health challenges. And so if you look at it in that way and say, I've been called to write this book because there's something about myself that I need to transform. And so if you resist the writing, or if you resist the telling of it, then you're actually holding your own self back. So when you feel those emotions, all I ask people to do is to just write through them, and write it as if no one's ever going to read it anyway, right? Just write it, because it's therapeutic, it's cathartic. And if you actually understand the fact that all that great stuff happens on the other side of fear, and all of these things that come up, it's all different faces of fear, right? Fear of success, fear of judgment, fear of failure. So when you feel those emotions, what you want to do is write them, but instead of saying, well, I don't want to write that because I may hurt that person's feelings when they read this, or I don't want to say that because, so-and-so is going to read it. Just write it as if it's a journal for yourself, as if nobody is ever going to. And I promise you, if you do that, you will get past all of those obstacles that aren't really there. We put them there because we don't want to feel those emotions again, right? But if you're writing your story, and if you take your eyes off yourself for a second and say, well, if I tell this part of my story, how is it going to help somebody else? When they read it, how am I going to impact the life of another? That is probably the quickest way for you to overcome any feeling that comes up, because you could say, well, it would be really worth it. Like, I would be prepared to live through these emotions coming up and handling them and moving through them if I knew it helped somebody. And I don't think I've ever met anyone that would say no, right? Because we all want to impact other people with our work, whether you're, whatever art form you're doing, you want other people to enjoy your art. And that's what writing a book is. It's an art form, and it's very personal.
I'm happy you addressed that, because I was thinking that just last night about, if I wrote that, so-and-so reads it, they're going to be upset, or they're going to be, maybe jealous, or so. But in writing, we have different genres, fiction, nonfiction as well. Are there certain rules or writing techniques that you must do depending on the type of writing that you're doing?
I don't think so necessarily. I mean, I've done all genres. I've done fiction, nonfiction, children's, memoir. I'm a big believer in free writing. I'm a big believer in taking emotion out of here. And I guess I'm a believer in it is because that's how I lived my life as a kid. That's what I did. I took that stuff out of me, put it on the page, and then allowed it to kind of come out of me as it was meant to. And then I could evaluate it when it got in front of me. So when I first meet with people, the first thing I ask them is they often say, I have so many books, I want to write this book, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. And I try to, I can pretty much in a very short period of time figure out what that actual book is. Like, what is it? Because sometimes it's a book of nonfiction, and I want to write about this business idea and this thing that I've done. And sometimes we can form it all and put it into one book. Sometimes it actually is just one book. But what are you called to the most? I've had conversations where people they want to write their book of fiction, for example, and I have this story in my head, but I really want to write a children's book. I say, well, what calls you the most? Which voice is louder? And they go, I really want to write the children's book. So then that's where we start. It's a very human, holistic, intuitive experience that you're having, because it's your imagination and it's your creative faculties, and they're all part of you. This isn't something that, you have to go to university and learn. This is part of you. So when you take that part of your story and you make a decision to share it with people, it is often a good idea to have someone to guide you. And that's what I do, because I know that people are going to off-road. I know that they're going to get that little voice in their head that's eventually going to say, what are you doing? Who are you to write a book? You know, your story doesn't matter. Like, there's so many other stories that are so much more interesting than your story. Who do you think you are to write that story? It's not so important. Just put it away. And then I want to be there to make sure you get out of that ditch, get back on the road and keep moving.
I think that's that way with a lot of things, even creating new businesses and doing new things in life. You're always thinking, well, who am I to be the expert? But do you believe books give you credibility?
Oh yeah, there's no question. It's one of the #1 ways on the planet to gain authority in the marketplace, because you are deemed to be, well, the word author comes from authority. So, you know, you are an authority in your zone of genius. So whatever it is you're writing about, even if it's a book of fiction, it's your imagination. You know, like you think of somebody like, you know, J.K. Rowling is considered one of the best, you know, fiction writers on the planet. She started somewhere. She decided to take a risk and go around and, you know, peddle her manuscript to a whole bunch of publishers that didn't want anything to do with her. So I independently publish manuscripts because I don't want people to have to feel that their work has to be judged by a panel of people that are really only taking a look at it based on what they think they can make money with it on. And if you have a name or don't have a name, it all gets into the judgment piece. So I always recommend you get the work out of you, get it out into the world, publish it independently, create a following for yourself, create an empire for yourself. And then you'll be surprised. You'll have a publisher that has a wide distribution coming and knocking on your door instead of the other way around. You know?
Can you please tell us the best way to market the books? Once, I mean, like, I know it's a time frame, obviously, it could take however long you're doing it, but just tell the audience, you know, how would you market a book? Well, we're all part of Oxygen Publishing.
You are.
Right? Because we're up and coming authors. So
forthcoming authors, own it, all of you.
Forthcoming authors. Okay.
I am so happy now that I am an author.
That's right. You have to think of everything in the present tense. That's how you get closer to the goal and you move the goal closer to you. If you've never read Neville Goddard material, I highly recommend it. I am so happy and grateful now that I'm a best-selling author. And then you own that. And then you'll move closer to that goal and it'll move closer to you. So what was your question again, Michelle? Sorry. Market the book. Market the book. Yeah. So one of the first things that we always recommend authors have is a website. And you'd be really surprised how many people don't. They don't. Well, but even before that, have your domain name.com, your name.com. I mean, I have 3 kids and all 3 kids had their domain name since like they were, I don't know how old, because I always wanted them to have their names.com. And then when they decided whatever business they were going to go in, they would have their name.com. And then I consider that your umbrella brand. So I have carolynflower.com. I've had it for years. You can go to oxygenpublishing.com, but you can also get there by my umbrella brand. My books, any programs I have, everything I'm doing is under that umbrella. So that's the first place to kind of give yourself an identity in the big world, is have a website. And then for a lot of writers and authors, your book is woven into your brand and your business. So there are some authors that we've published that it's just a bucket list item. Well, I shouldn't say just. Like this book, this one we just released about 2 months ago. And this one is called A Boy from Cherry Hill. And this gentleman's 85 years old.
Oh, God bless him.
And he wanted to write his memoir. So he didn't need a website. He wasn't marketing the book. He just wanted to have it on Amazon. He's an international, he's a PhD, and he has all this credibility in his own industry, and he wanted to have it on Amazon so people around the world, but he wasn't interested in marketing it. A lot of our authors are building either, they start writing a book to work in tandem with their business and their brand, or the other way around. They have the business and the brand, or they're just doing the book and kind of putting the whole thing together. So that is really where your marketing becomes, it all needs to be in harmony. So when you discover what you're writing your book about and how you want to weave the service that you're bringing to other people into that book, and how does that mesh with the business that you're in, you're going to now develop a much broader marketing campaign for your book. And if you're not, then yeah, you have to have a website. You want to drive traffic to it. You want to be very present on social media as an author, you know, Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, and constantly marketing yourself, because you are your brand, right? You're the author, you're the brand.
Now, I also know editing is very important, and that's
Yes.
the big piece before all the wonderful marketing and the unboxing, which we attended, an unboxing for one of your authors.
That was awesome.
And that was incredible. And so explain to the audience about editing, and what is that process, and how many times do you have to do a rough draft? How does that rough draft get re-edited? What goes into that?
So editing is probably equal to the writing. So you're the author, you're writing the book. I'll explain first, and it's probably worth noting the difference between what I do and what's called self-publishing. Okay, because people drop that all the time. Oh, I'm going to self-publish my book. And I say, that's not advisable in any circumstance. Why? Because you want to get it out there. And I understand that not everyone has a massive budget to write and publish a book. But here's the thing, that book is legacy. That book has your name on it. And that book identifies you as an authority. So if you put out something that's less than excellent, you will be judged by it. And I've had far too many corrected books come to me where people go out there and they publish a book, and they get, you know, people come back to them and they go, did you even proofread this thing? Like, it's full of mistakes. How could you even put it into the marketplace like that? And the cover looks horrible. And if people see this ugly cover, which by all standards means something that is just nondescript, it's just something to slap a cover on there, and then the interior quality isn't very good and your name's on the front of it, that is how they're going to view working with you, dealing with you, and they're going to think that that's the quality you represent. And that's what self-publishing is about. That's about, I just want to throw a bunch of stuff out and see if it sticks on Amazon, and I never advise it. So what we do is independently publish it so that you get to write your story your way. You own the rights, you own everything, but we are the quality control people.
And this is Oxygen Publishing that we're talking about. I wanted to back up a little bit. When you obviously had a 1-year anniversary, but what was the inspiration in creating it? Was it this exact what you're talking about, the wanting to help people get the right credibility?
It started back in 2014, 2015. So when I published my first book, and here I am, a writer in the industry and a communicator and in media here in Montreal. So, and nothing goes out of my office without an editor. We'll get back to that in a second. But even when I published my book, I had a design team already, because my company was a communication company, and I already had a lot of these team members as part of my business. And even I didn't know where to go. Like, who do I talk to? Like, where do I get an editor? And I knew who would design my book because I've had the same design team for 17 years. But what do I do next? Like, I don't know what to do. And there was really no place that I could, I mean, if you Google how to write a book, you're going to get 1,000 answers, right? So as I went through this process, I basically documented it, and I said, well, if I'm struggling with it and I'm in the industry, I believe there's probably tens of thousands of people out there that aren't writing their story because they don't know how to start, and they don't know where to go, and they don't know who to trust, right? That's a big part of it. So back in 2015, when I published the book, once I published, I had a few people come and say, you know, I've been working with you for many years in XYZ projects. How did you write the book? And then I would tell them, and they said, well, can you help me? And then before I knew it, I developed a whole literary division of my company, and we started publishing books. And as we did that over a period of 5-6 years, it became really obvious that a lot of the people that sought me out were people that had gone for solutions in the industry and had been hugely disappointed. They had lost money. they were, there was just a lot of misinformation. And so I said, okay, how can I communicate our brand in a way that gives people that sense of ease and knowing that they're looked after? And I just thought of that word, right? Just oxygen, and we breathe life into your book. And that's precisely what we did. So a year ago, yesterday, we launched Oxygen, or launched it as, I wanted a foothold in the industry. I wanted to be known as that feeling that people don't get and that are looking for, and what we embody. And I wanted the name to reflect that. So that's where Oxygen came from. And then Oxygen became the publishing division of my company. And we've been just going like crazy ever since. And then I built the Academy, the International Academy of Authorship. That Academy is for all those people that aren't ready to go and publish that book yet. They want to learn about writing, they want to learn about editing, they want to learn about mindset, about fear. So now I have my own teachers at the Academy that are now doing 4-week mentorship classes. And so we address all of those parts so that by the time you take some of those classes, depending on when you come in and where you're at as far as your development, we basically teach you to become that author. And then so when you get to, okay, I have a manuscript now, I've written it, I've had some help learning how to edit it and how to go back and assess it, then you come into Oxygen as an author with a product that needs to be fine-tuned. Okay, and just made better. And so we have this human experience where you meet your editor. And what is your editor going to do? They're going to take your manuscript, they're going to read it, they're going to assess it, and they're going to say, okay, this is great, this needs work, this we have to kind of, we have to move this around a little bit. Sometimes it's a super, super light edit, like our recent one, Paul Huber, he came in, he had done so much on that manuscript. When it came to us, it was in fine shape, right? And then it goes through a full edit, and then it goes through a proofread. So that's a solid, like 3-step process, so that by the time it's ready to be designed on the inside to look like a book, the manuscript is done, it's ready. And then we design the cover, the wrap, that's called the cover. So the inside and the outside. And then we have all sorts of other options if you want, ebooks and websites and all that. And then we get you up there on Amazon selling as an author.
So
Now that,
I just have a question that I'm writing, and I'm putting a lot of famous people's names in my book. Am I allowed to do that?
It really depends. We're going to have a conversation, you and me and your editor.
Yeah, because somebody asked me, in fact, Mickey James asked me yesterday, she said, how are you going to be able to do this? How are you going to write people's names in there?
Yeah. Well, you the first thing that you have to think about if you're actually naming people is getting their permission. Okay, that's number one. And so if we're writing about a really difficult time in our life, we can't name a person, because that's the fastest way to get a defamation suit slapped on you. So you can't do that, but you can write it in a way, and editors are geniuses for helping you express it in a way where you're not naming somebody. But if you do want to name somebody and it's a super positive thing and they're part of, your experience and part of your clients and all of that, they would never object to it, then your best bet is to get their permission. And just say, listen, I'm writing a book and I'm going to be talking about that project we work on. Is that okay with you? Do you even want to see a little bit of it before so make friends with that audience. Why? Because they'll be more likely to help you promote it if they've been asked for permission.
Yeah, because I've taken pictures before for Jimmy Snuka, who's a world renowned wrestler. Okay. Superfly Jimmy Snuka. I took pictures at his party and they put it in his book. And they didn't put my name under it or anything.
Well, they should have. You should have had full photo credit there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to give more credit than you even need to. Always err on the side of caution. Always give more credit where credit is due. But you should have go to those people and ask permission to put them in your book. Yeah.
Well, he kind of passed away, but in the same sense.
Okay. Yeah.
At that point, I wasn't going to do anything because it's Superfly Jimmy Snuka. I mean, you just can't, you know, you just can't. He was.
Well, sometimes, you know, nobody asks and nobody says, hey, who took this photo? They just put them in with a group of photos, and they, on their end, they, you know, that's the right thing to do anyway. That's all I can tell you. Like, even if I use Unsplash photos from the free Unsplash platform to get photos, right? They're free photos, but they always ask, would you mind giving the photographer credit if you use it? You don't have to, you haven't paid for them, but I always do. Why wouldn't you? They've took that, it's a piece of art, give them credit.
And isn't it when you mention something that you're talking about in a book that you learned from perhaps a mentor or someone else, or you got from them, or it's their theory, that you give credit? Is that a mandatory credit? Yes. Or it's just an educated thing?
No, that would be mandatory in my books. Like, if you're going to pull out a quote from somebody's book, for example, the most you would pull out is a line. Right. And even then you would have a reference section at the back of your book. I mean, in my book, it's a book about gratitude, for goodness sakes. I've got a huge list of references, and even things that I have been influenced by books or studies or, you know, articles in the New York Times. It doesn't matter where it comes from. That's why I encourage people, when they're writing their book, at the very beginning of the process, keep a list, because you won't be able to remember, you know, where all these things came from, but just keep a list. And then they get set up in the back of your book in a reference section, just like you would for a thesis, like in Chicago Rules or however we end up setting it up. It's properly indexed at the end of your book so that nobody could say they didn't get their credit.
Does the same go if you're sharing a theory that you learned from someone?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you just think of it in terms of, if it doesn't belong to you, and now if it's something that's broad spectrum that you want to include in your book, that you have to get permission for, that you would have to write to the Napoleon Hill Foundation, for example, and say, I want to cite the 13 principles in Think and Grow Rich in my book. Now, chances are they'll say no, because they don't know you. They don't know how that material is being used. They don't have quality control over it. So most of these places will say no. And then, you know, there may be one or two, if they do know you and you have a name for yourself, that may ask to see the manuscript, and then they'd take a look at it. And so they'd be able to assess how it's being used. But most of your writing, you know, yes, we're influenced by things for sure, but you're writing your story, right? You're writing about, you know, different things that you've gone through, what you've overcome, things you've learned. And then just imagine your reader sitting there with the same confusion that maybe you had at one point, and now you've just offered them up all this permission to change their life because you did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically writing right now my, you know, people that I booked, my clients. Like, I'm on a section where I'm doing conventions, which is a trip, and it's crazy because, like, it could actually help these people. Like, no, I don't know, what is the saying, Holly? I know you know it. Something about you know, any news is any type of exploitation.
All bad news is good news. It's a very Hollywood thing.
Exactly.
All publicity is good publicity.
Good publicity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean.
Yeah, I like people to think of it as a creative process, but at the same time, if it were easy, everyone would do it. You know, so you want to understand that I mean, if you make the decision to write a book or do anything really in life, it's the decision that starts the process, because most people talk about it and they know they want to do it and everyone tells them they should do it, but they don't actually make the decision. As soon as you make a decision, then your priorities shift, and this becomes something that you're focused on, and you make you make a timeline for yourself and say, listen, this is my goal. I'm going to, you know, get to, first of all, you want to feel what it feels like now that that book is in your hands. So set yourself a target. I had Deepak Chopra. He was my target because I was going to study with Deepak at the Chopra Center in June of 2015. And this was February of 2015. And I didn't have a book written, but I wanted to give him a copy. So I said, I better get busy. So it got busy, and I wrote and I published it, and I got to give him a copy of that book with my gratitude. And that was my burn. That is what got me writing that thing every single day. And everybody needs something like that, something that they anchors them into, because you're not going to be motivated to write a book every day. But if you have that in your mind, as if you're handing it to somebody, it'll get you moving pretty quick. So that's something that people want to ask themselves.
We have a really fun question.
Yeah.
From a fan.
Okay.
As a writer, what would you choose as your spirit animal?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
I know what mine's going to be.
I don't know what I've never thought of that question. I don't know. But I'm going to think about it.
Okay. Let us know.
I will. I will.
I'm going to tell you, I'm a monkey or a dog.
Okay.
I like common, mellow things that make people laugh, and dogs make people laugh, and so do monkeys. I guess it's because I always wanted to be a comedian.
You're a comedian already.
No, I don't know about that. I think, you know what, who makes me laugh is Holly. Like
I'm a comedian now.
No, there's nights where Heather, Holly, and myself, and Ace, and we're all on a Zoom, and Heather says constantly, we should be taping this. And one time I took the camera.
Yes.
You gotta tell them. One time I took the camera, and it sounded like it was like one of those murder movies, but it was just like me moving like this, and it sounded like it was scraping, and I'm moving my hands like this, and I'm taping, and it was just hilarious. And it was just little snippets of them just moving around, and it looked like it could have been like, it really did look.
Well, at the end, it looked like she was breathing heavy, or somebody was, and then she laughs. And I
like
said,
that.
This is the scene right before one of us gets murdered.
Well, you're an entertainment company.
Yeah.
Come on. It's all part of what you do. It sounds like you entertain one another more. That's good.
We do. We would make every reality show, including the Kardashians. I think we would blow them out the box. Just our Zooms alone would blow them out the box. I'm telling you.
Well, what I love about you guys is that you just keep growing, right? You made a decision yourselves, because we've known each other for like 6-8 months, and everyone has expanded to such great degrees through this whole situation that, life has served us. And it's been such a great opportunity for everyone to kind of reimagine kind of life of my living, and what do I want to do? And, what are my aspirations, and how do I have to reimagine my life and my business? Because I know an awful lot of pieces. I mean, I've been in the online space for a number of years. And so people would typically say, oh yeah, you do that online thing. And my whole business is built so I can travel and go wherever I need to be. And now they're coming back going, so tell me a little bit more about that online thing you do. It's like, man, you can create multiple streams of income for yourself if you just reimagine the way your business works. And there's so many opportunities out there for you to do it. So I think that's what, from myself personally, that's what this whole, since let's say mid-February into March, April, May, June, it's just, it's expanded my thinking on how can I serve better? How can I serve in a bigger way? What are people asking of me to teach them? Like, what do they want to know? Not so much what do I want to teach, but what do you want to know? And then I'll create something that will help you learn that. And I think there's so many people out there, they've got their stories in them, and they should be on paper, because they've experienced such incredible things in their life, and their readers are just sitting waiting. All of your readers are sitting waiting for you. Heather's got an incredible book. As a matter of fact, I need to introduce you to somebody, Heather, that I spoke to, who's an 18-year-old young lady who is expecting her first, and unexpectedly expecting her first. And I said, I'm going to plug you in. I have I said, I have somebody who's writing a book that probably could tell you a few things.
I would love that. Yes, definitely. Give her my information.
That's your audience. So you imagine there's people out there that want to know what you know, and they want to learn from you. So I see people, the book doesn't write itself, people. Let's get busy. Let's get busy. Let's get your story out of you.
Are you lecturing all of us right now?
No.
I really believe in when I finally wrapped my
The
head around
beyond.
it.
Yeah.
Believe in the life doesn't happen to you, it happens
For you.
for you.
Always.
And when you can wrap your head around that, it
Yeah.
really changes the trajectory of things
For
in your
sure.
life.
It's perspective too.
I
you
want
know?
to ask you a few more questions because you are just so full of nuggets and it's just great talking to you
We
always.
do
And
love
while
you.
we have you here, I really want to get into your school, what you have, the programs you have. Can you tell us a little bit of you also created some new programs just literally weeks ago that are now out. And so could you share with people what they are, perhaps maybe the order that they could, what their choices are, and how they can reach you and how they can do that. And then we can go back to a few other questions, a little more time, because we just love having you here.
Oh, thank you guys. I love being here. So where the order of which is my website, both of them, whether it's carolynflower.com or oxygenpublishing.com, right at the very top, there's a book of clarity called an author consult. So if anyone wants to just talk to me about their book or their idea, you don't even have to have a book. You just have an idea spark and you go, okay, I got to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about because I think I'm going crazy. I keep getting this idea that keeps telling me I got to write a book. I read a book and I can't shut it up. I need to talk to somebody. So talk to me. And then I can tell you, how to solve that. But after that, I found that there were a lot of people that had an awful lot of questions. So I developed something called Ask Me Anything. And Ask Me Anything is 90 minutes with me. And you can ask me everything about writing, publishing, becoming, mindset, business, branding, all of those things that you just don't know where to start, and I can set you on track. So that's that's called Ask Me Anything. And that's 90 minutes of whatever you want to ask me. You can package it all up. And often what we do after that 90 minutes is then we set you on a course that you really know you want to go on. Because people have got, it's fantastic, so many ideas, but sometimes you need somebody else to help you kind of gain clarity on what you want to focus on first.
So it's like a consult plus.
Yeah, it's a consult plus. And then I developed Shape Your Story, which is really that all came to fruition in Vegas at 10X, because I had people coming up to me saying, you're the book lady, and I have an idea, and I don't have a manuscript. I don't have anything written down. I just have an idea. And how do I figure that out? So, the truth of the story is I was at the lounge, the Pitch Freak lounge, and a couple of people asked me, do you have a program that you can help me figure this out? And I said, sure, I have a program. I went back to my hotel room and created one, came back to the lounge, and I said, here's the link. It's called Shape Your Story. Sign up right here.
Brilliant.
I love it.
So that's what I did throughout GrowthCon. And so people were so we would talk about that. And that was really the Academy. I created the Academy. Again, you know how these seeds of ideas come to you. And so you take action. And I took action. I got the trademark. I got the copyright. I got everything I needed for it a year ago. But it hadn't been created in real time until Vegas. And I had Ask Me Anything. I had all of these different things. But once I created Shape Your Story in Vegas, I said, oh my gosh, this is my Academy. This is exactly what I was meant to create. So I took that idea, which is four sessions of 90 minutes with me, right? Where I literally go into your brain and pull out all this stuff.
And she does.
And
yes,
I do.
She does.
And I go figure out, what is it you want to write about? Let's mastermind on that. So Shape Your Story is if you really don't have anything yet, and you want to have a framework. You want to know, what is my book about? After 4 weeks with me, you'll know all of that, and you'll be in great shape to take the next step, which is getting some writing done, going and writing, taking what I call the brain dump, all that information and dropping it into that framework that we've created together. And then we shape it. So after that, you want somebody to help you put it in some sort of an order. Okay. And that's called Develop Your Story. And one of my editors, Sherry Reinhardt, she has a 4-week group program, which is there's only four students at a time. So everyone gets a lot of attention. And that is, you bring your manuscript and you all work on it with her expertise, and she'll do some reading in between classes, and she'll tell you why this needs to move, and all of her expertise goes into that. She's a ghostwriter, she's an editor, she's a manuscript evaluator. So that's the next step. And then after that, and you've gone and taken her advice and done all those things you got to do, then you move over to edit your story live. And edit your story with Richard Tardif, who's also a ghostwriter, journalist, best-selling author. He takes your manuscript live and actually edits it with you. So
we're actually going to have him on the show as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
He's great. He's been on my team for years, and I love him. And he's got an incredible story all into himself, which is the subject of two of his books. So that's the next, but what we have coming, so I have Face Your Fear and Write Your Book. So that's a 4-week class with Emmanuel.
Wow.
Right. And I've got Create Your Brand. And that's with a gal in the UK who's a dear friend of mine. And she's been in the branding industry for 30 years in the top advertising agencies. And she's going to teach you how to create your personal brand, your archetype, all of that. So that's another one coming. And then we have Create Your Online Course with the top Kajabi gal, Catherine Dove, and she's been creating courses online for 20 years. So she's going to teach you how to create your online course. And so now we've got all of these pods of teaching that is not just about taking a pen out and writing, but it's teaching you how to become the author and build your book, your brand, and your business. So by the time you get to the agency, to the publishing, you go, wow, I'm like so prepared. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what I'm writing. I know who to work with. I'm working with my editors now. And then we design your book, right? The cover of your book, and you work with my designers on that, the inside, the outside. And this is all custom. This is all well thought through. Like this, for example, this cover, The Boy from Cherry Hill. I mean, there's hours and hours that go into this, but what you don't see is my designer reading this man's memoir and pulling from it what he believes the author would find important on the front of this. And then, we present these ideas to our clients, and they go, how did you know? It's because we invest in these projects. Like, we really care about this book that we're putting out with your name on it and our name on it. That's the difference between what we do and self-publishing a book. It's like a cavern of a difference between the two. And then the result and the quality that goes out into the marketplace is also totally different. And that's to your benefit, because you got to love your book. You got to be super proud of it. Your name's on it.
I sat in on, you had a guest that talked all about just the making of the cover of the book. And
that's my designer, Steve.
That's an entire, content just all on its own. And it was incredible, because it was just, I found the way I describe it, it's a whole psychology.
It is.
To that book cover, it is a psychology. It's not just slapping some picture on there that looks great. There is, for example, Paul Huber's book.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
That cover is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that cover is all about killing complacency, but his name is Steve Walters, and he's been on my team for going on 17 years. 2 Brits, him and his business partner, and his business partner, Charles is in the office. We have an office there.
Steve.
In the UK. And so Steve he's the genius behind all the book covers. And I mean, he really thinks about this stuff. So, and he'll take a good 5-6 chapters of a book, and that takes time, right? You're going to sit down, you're going to invest in this new author and what they think and what's going on, as they're reading it. And one of the metaphors that Paul uses in his book is all about kind of spinning your wheels. You think you're moving forward, but you're not, and you're being complacent, but you're trying to move, and you're kind of like going nowhere fast. And so he actually transformed that metaphor into something quite literal on the front cover. And then what a lot of people may or may not have noticed, but Paul writes a lot from a religious, standpoint. And so Steve made sure that in that cover, there was an image of a cross. so that was very much part of what he was bringing to this book. And so on the inside of the book, he created, you know, when you were a kid and you did this thing with a book and you went shh with the pages and something ran across it.
Yes,
Yes.
So what we did is we did a tire moving. So when you flip Paul's book, you see the tire run across the bottom of the book, right? And you imagine that gets moved on every page. He does a different image on every single page. So this is the kind of creativity that goes into a book. And that's why, you know, when we say that, you know, we prepare a proposal for you and it's unique to you, it's not just an assembly line where you go to Fiverr and you get a cover that maybe you're going to see your book somewhere else in a different color, but the same makeup on the cover. You're never going to find a cover that we do anywhere because it is unique to you. And then, you know, front cover, back cover, you got to get this stuff right too. You know, what you write on the back cover, this is your prime real estate. Okay, this you got to get right first. And people go, wow. And what do you do next? This. So this is your prime real estate. This is your sales copy. So you best get that right. So we got to craft that together so that your back cover copy really gives your reader, you know, the promise of this book. What is this book about? What am I going to learn? How am I going to be better after reading what you've spent your time reading? So it's really a very comprehensive, like we all work like a machine, different moving parts to breathe life into it. And everyone has their role. And the beautiful thing, I think, is that you get to work with everybody and they get to work with you. So you're very much hands-on in your own creativity. You have the final word. It's your product called a book. But at the end of the day, you've got to feel just so good about this book that you're putting out, and see a guy like Paul Huber who sees his book for the very first time.
Yes.
And it impacts you.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And
Now,
you're all going to experience that.
We had the privilege of attending the unboxing for Paul Huber, and his book Killing Complacency actually comes out on July 6th. So it was really beautiful. It was such a special moment. That moment moment was once in a lifetime. Yeah. And it's just so amazing a special moment to share it if you've never
it's nice to share
that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that with a few authors live like that. I've done Zoom calls with them live and they open it up for the first time. And it's a very emotional thing because it's like unveiling something for the first time and you see your own name staring back at you, your own picture on the back cover. And then you understand what all that time and why, you know, it's very much like I did a fundraising event last year here in Montreal. It was called the Author Fest fundraiser, and a hospital that I'm affiliated with here, where my 3 children were born, asked if I would like to become an ambassador for the hospital and do a fundraising event. So I said, as long as I could do it for the birthing center where my children were born, I would do it. So it was done at a big yacht club here last October, and I had authors from all over, my authors, like 20 of them, fly in from New York and from California, and they all came in to support that event. It was like really something, and the whole thing, I marketed the whole thing as birthing books and birthing babies. That's what linked what I do to what I was raising money for, because it really is very similar, because this is a labor of love, right? It really is that much. It's holistic that way. So it's a labor of love. So, you know, when people say to me, yeah, I can write a book in a weekend, it's like, okay, well, you won't be writing it with me. You can certainly go write, but to write a whole book and to package it up and put everything together and write your story in a weekend, you know, you might want to consider giving it a little bit more time than that.
So we have a question in the audience, Heather. Can you see the chat?
Yes, 1 second here. Okay. Did you ever consider writing under a pseudonym?
I haven't, no, but I do have a couple of authors who did. One of them did for a really specific reason. She wanted to get her story out of her. And, but it was really about a difficult time in her life. And so, she wrote it in a way that was almost a book of fiction based on real life events, but she did not want to put her name to it. So she wrote it under a pseudonym. But no, I wouldn't. I mean, authors do it out there for a couple of reasons. I mean, they do it for those reasons, but it's tough to market your book when you can't show your face. But, you know, like Stephen King writes under Bachman, right? He has two names because it's reserved for two different genres. So sometimes people write with a pseudonym for that. It's totally doable. I mean, it's your book. You get to do whatever you want.
So
Right?
I was going to ask you, who's your favorite author?
Oh, yeah.
And have you met that author? And then I'm going to ask you another question after that.
My favorite author. I mean, I was always a fan of the mind of Stephen King. I mean, I grew up with his books just playing a super huge role in my escapism. You know, like the book The Stand is one of my favorite books ever. And I always admired him as a writer, as his artistic talent. I'm absolutely in love with some of the older books written on mindset books, like Neville Goddard. I mean, if I were to show you this, I'd have to move my screen because it's under my screen, but this is a book that I love. It's a collection of Neville Goddard, right? And I mean, I study books all the time. So my favorite authors tend to be not so much fiction oriented. They tend to be the ones that have taught me the biggest lessons. Neville Goddard is one of them. And certainly Wallace Wattles and Maxwell Maltz. And they all wrote these incredible books that teach us how to think. And those books are super powerful for me.
Well, that book looks pretty thick. How long is that going to take you to read?
That's a collection, and that is just a treasure trove. So I don't sit down and say, I'm going to read this whole thing. I sit down with one of these and I open it. And wherever I open it is where I'm meant to read today. Right?
Wow.
It kind of calls me in. So I open the book. I have no plan or agenda, and I just open the book. And every time I do, I say, isn't that interesting?
I've done that with the Bible.
I do that with books. I believe it's your soul is going to be drawn to read what the message is.
Because we're always growing, right? We're always transforming. And I have this thing that you've heard me talk about called the gap. And you know, there's this place that exists for me in between who you were and who you're becoming. And because I help people become, I often get to work in this space with people where they're kind of in this messy middle. They don't really know who they are because they're not that person anymore because they've transformed, but they're not the person that they aspire to be yet. They're stuck in this middle. And then how do you make sense of that? And writing is the best way to make sense of that and to learn personal development. So it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable. And so people tend to go back to old habits when they feel that sense of discomfort because they think, well, the familiar is where I belong, but it's actually not. You need to decide what scares you the most and go that way. Go toward that thing that scares you the most, because that's what you need to do first. So I've spent the last probably 5 years of my life purposefully moving toward fear and feeling all of that emotion that you feel, but I can't tell you that I would ever have changed it because it's opened me up to all sorts of opportunities and possibilities that I wouldn't have seen before.
I so feel you on that.
Me too. Everything that I went through was just, it was a learning lesson and I needed to do it because I feel if I didn't do it, I would have to go back and do it.
I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you guys about all this wonderful, incredible journey that we're all having and sharing between us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah. This is you're all in this place now where you're experimenting with the parts of your story that you're familiar with, parts you may have packed away for a while, parts that are calling you forward and saying, hey, don't forget about me. There's this thing. Don't forget. It needs to go in the story because it defines you. Really interestingly enough, when I wrote my book, and I have a friend of mine who's he's an author coach, And we were having a conversation one day. And so I said, I was writing another book at the time. I was writing Family Ever After, which is my next book. And I was well into writing that. And one chapter was all about gratitude. And I was going on and on and on and on. I kept writing and writing. So I said to him, like, what's that about? You know, I can't seem to get myself out of this gratitude chapter. So he says, well, here's what I want you to do. He says, I know you're going to think I'm a little bit nuts. He said, take your book, the book you're writing, which is not the book I ended up publishing yet. This one comes out later. And he says, I want you to take the cover, which I had, the cover. I said, I want you to go down into your car. And he says, I want you to sit the cover in the driver's seat. I said, you want me to sit with my cover, just me and my cover in my car? He said, just do it. He said, then get in the passenger seat of your car. I live in the country, like nobody could see me, you know? And he said, I want you to ask the book what it wants you to do. And I said, oh, really? He said, yep, go do that. So I did. And I sat there. Hey, cover, how's it going? Okay, no, really, what do I do now? Like this book I keep writing, like, what am I supposed to do? And I got this intuition that said, you have to write a whole book on gratitude before you even write this one. And I went, wow. So I got back in touch with this guy. I said, okay, I did what you asked. He goes, and? I said, I have to write a book about gratitude. He said, and so you will. And that's how that whole inspiration for that book came from. And my father had just passed away, and I was using gratitude as a way of, like, it was an experiment I was doing to live through a really difficult time, taking charge of my mom, who had mental illness that I didn't know about, and I was now her caretaker. So I was going to use gratitude during the toughest time and see if it changed my life. So I wrote gratitude for 365 days straight and changed everything. And that's where that book comes from. So, yeah.
Now that you're famous, Carolyn, what was it like the first time you Googled yourself?
The only time anyone's ever Googled me on my team is to make sure my SEO's in place. But no, there's my website. There's really nothing, you know, if your intention is to serve other people and to just bring them closer to where they want to be, because that helps them, and then it always helps you, because there's a great sense of accomplishment when it doesn't matter like what you do for a living, right? You go and you do a proposal for somebody's house, and then you bring that house to life with color and vibrancy, and all of a sudden they walk in their home and they go, oh, what a transformation. I mean, it's the same idea.
Definitely.
And then you get that great sense of satisfaction that I helped them take a little, like I got the privilege of being on this journey with them to do this little thing for them to help them get them from here to there. And then books take on a life of their own after they're born. They just do. They become all sorts of things. They become the platform. They become the springboard. They become the talking point. They become TED Talks. They become courses. They become workshops. And they become entire business models. So that's where I think that I'm really passionate about independently working with people, because the marketplace we're in now, you don't have to go to the big studios anymore to go get like a documentary made. You come with an idea. You know, we got Netflix now, we have HBO, and we have Amazon Prime. If you don't own your rights to your books, you can't do anything with them after they're written. So if you go to some place and they pay you a small little royalty, but they own your book, that's it. Yeah. You can't expand.
It's just like the music business.
You can't expand it. I met with Anonymous Content when I was in LA, and I met with the book people that turn books into programming. And she was so clear on that. She said, you know, if you have an author, if one of your authors, because now I have that connection, it's something I want to have available to people. But if one of your authors has a book that you think is worthy of a look as a screenplay, you got to make sure they own the rights.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, because I have scripts that I've written for movies. Could we put them into books too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you would just they'd have to be written in a way that's set up like a book. But I mean, you can write a book that's a play, right? So it's just a matter of structure. So we would take whatever structure you have now and we would transform it and figure out exactly what you want to deliver. Like, what is it that you want your reader to read? And then that's what we do. We make sure that it's constructed properly, and then that's what Shari does. She makes sure it flows properly and it makes sense to your end reader. And that's all in the development of a manuscript. And that's fun. That's the creative part. So.
It's incredible. I love, we've so enjoyed having you. I can't thank you enough. We still have, we're going to have to just bring you on again, because we have so many more questions, could just talk to you endlessly. Please look for Carolyn at oxygenpublishing.com, carolynflower.com. You can find her on Instagram and Facebook at Carolyn Flower. And did I miss, are there?
No, I'm under my name on all platforms, so it's pretty straightforward, and you can always book a call with me by going to either one of those websites, or reach out to me on social media. I'm always around, and I'd love to hear about your extraordinary story. And I have a Facebook group as well called Your Extraordinary Stories Community. So come on over and become part of our family.
Wait, am I in that? I got to get in there. I have to get in there. Yeah, I'm in there.
And I have a final question for you, or two. I always like to ask people, what is something that you discovered in this journey about yourself that completely blew you away, that you didn't expect?
Resilience. Yeah, resilience. I've discovered through what I've learned through training with Bob Proctor, I've learned how to use my mind to look through the lens of perspective. And so when all of this world event came upon us, it didn't take me into a rabbit hole. And so I learned that I can create whatever the reality is on the outside by using my mind. And a lot of us learn those things. Like, we learn it, or we read it, or someone teaches us, or we watch a video and we say, oh yeah, that's, I could do that. But when you start applying it and start practicing it, you can really create the life that you want. So I think it would be like, I'm resilient enough to be able to, take a situation, look at it from a perspective, and create something with it. Look for an opportunity in it instead of looking for a hardship in it. Because as you know, the world we live in now, you can choose how you want to view. It doesn't change what's going on out there, but it does change the way you feel based on how you think about it. And being in control of your own thinking is a super powerful thing to actually be able to implement in your life every single day.
And 3 words to describe yourself, 3 words only.
Passionate, driven, compassionate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
thanks, guys.
Look for Carolyn. Thank you for books, branding, business, the entire thing. And the great thing about Oxygen Publishing and Carolyn Flower is it's like a family. It's not, you don't go in there feeling like you're being a lot of publishing companies. I hear stories that they just, really go over, or
you're a number.
Yeah, you're a number, and you're on it. But with Carolyn, I can say from my experience and just starting with her, it is very much like a family. You're not pushed, you're actually empowered.
Yep.
So look for Carolyn Flower. Again, thank you so much for joining us on Mupo Entertainment. Thank you to our host and creator, our CEO of Mupo Entertainment, Michelle yes. Mupo.
Oh, no.
Who you can, this show is sponsored by mupotv.com, and you can look us up at www.mupoentertainment.com. Thank you for having me as your co-host, and my other co-host, Heather Hernandez, my sister, and Carolyn Flower. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time, and we will see you next time. And as always, this is Hollywood live with Mupo and Friends, and we are over and out.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All of your books.